Well, welcome back to the game room. It's been a while since I've uploaded, but um, today the Game Awards decided to release their nominees for their different awards, and so figured it would be nice to just do a kind of off the cuff discussion about the nominees. Won't be really talking about what nominees may have been snubbed or commenting too much on the choices therein, but I will definitely be giving my opinion and kind of give you an idea as to how I feel some of these games size up in their nominations. So let's go ahead and get started here. So right off the bat, we're talking about Game of the Year. So there are 6 nominees in here. We have Astrobot, Balatro, Black Myth Wukong, Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and Metaphor ReFantazio. So, as far as my personal experience, first off, I'm going to read each of these descriptions of the award. So, recognizing a game that delivers the absolute best experience across all creative and technical fields. So, Astrobot I did play, Balatro I did play, I played Black Myth and Elden Ring, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and although I did not buy the actual game, I did put a decent amount into the demo for Metaphor ReFantazio. Um, so just as far as my opinion goes on these, I know there was some controversy over the fact that Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, which is a DLC, is included on this list. There's also Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is a remake, technically. Um, so as far as all of these go, the two that I feel like deserve it, this is once again just my opinion, but the two that deserve it are either Astrobot or Black Myth Wukong. Shadow of the Erdtree, amazing. Kind of stands on its own. I know I was earlier this year even commenting in some social media and just conversations that this would be my game of the year, but it is a DLC. It's not an actual game. You have to own another game in order to even play this. If this was standalone and released, then that would be a different story, but it is an add on. And so Black Myth or Astrobot would be the choice in my opinion. Uh, Astrobot does so many things so well. Such a great game. And it definitely does do so much stuff across the creative and technical fields. Um, but the creative part is where I lean a little bit more towards Black Myth Wukong. Because as a game, it did more unique things. Astrobot felt like it was doing a lot of borrowing from things that had come before. It just kind of took them all and wrapped them in this really well done package, and that's what really gets it the recognition that it got. So for me, game of the year would be Black Myth Wukong. We're going to move on to the next category here, which is best game direction. So that's awarded for outstanding creative vision and innovation in game direction and design. So here, and I should probably really quickly just mention why, because it's identical nominees from Game of the Year to Best Game Direction here. So Balatro is a really good game, a really great game. Um, my only thing with it is it kind of has the same effect that I feel like Among Us had when it was big. In other words, Among Us, I believe, showed up in these awards too as nominee, um, and it was because it was so socially relevant. It was so constant in the conversations, whether it be casual gamers or mainstream gamers. And I think that's what's happening here at Balatro as well. It's not that it's a bad game in any way, shape, or form. Um, it's just there's definitely it's one of those things where it's how much direction do you need in a solitaire-esque, or I should say poker-esque, game. And so Astrobot, Black Myth Wukong, Elden Ring. So as far as these go, I'm not. It's not a game of the year thing, but it's gonna go to either Elden Ring or Metaphor. And the only reason why I say that is because Elden Ring Shadow of the Tree needed so many things to kind of line up and work well, and we saw with Elden Ring how well that game direction was. And Metaphor ReFantazio has so many elements, stylistic choices, and things like that really play together well too. Um, but I'd probably give it to Shadow of the Tree as far as this category goes. Now let's talk about best narrative. So I did play Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I did not play Like a Dragon. Once again, just the demo there. Senua Saga, I played about, I want to say, 40 minutes into it. Silent Hill 2, I've watched some playthroughs of the remake. I have not played it, but I have played the original. Um, so, as far as my opinion for outstanding storytelling and narrative development in a game, I've heard a lot of good things about Senua's, but RPGs are kind of designed to be carried by their narrative. If you don't have a good narrative, then it's not going to be something that is going to usually win out among a lot of the RPG fans. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth falls into a lot of tropes. It's a great story if you're already a Final Fantasy fan, but uh, it falls into a lot of the tropes that JRPGs fall into as far as storytelling and kind of story bloat, if you will. And so I'd probably give it to Metaphor Refantasio. Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth is another one that I'm sure if I had played this, it would probably be right there, and I'd be trying to decide which one. So, Metaphor Fantasio for me on that one. Best art direction. So here's one that's for outstanding creative and/or technical achievement in artistic design and animation. So, Neva, I have not played, but I played their previous game, Gris, and that one was beautiful. It was a work of art. Metaphor Refantasio had a lot of great stylistic choices as far as the art direction goes, but it did have that very Persona vibe. In other words, it wasn't really breaking out of any molds to try and do anything new as far as the visuals go. Elden Ring Shadow Tree, same thing there. It's great design, great direction, but we've seen it. Astrobot, there's a lot of reused assets throughout this. The art style is really really well done, which helps. It's kind of like the whole Nintendo mentality of if you have a good art style, then it will be timeless. You don't need to go for the great big graphics because those great big graphics may not stand the test of time. Most of the time, they do not, and so you need something that's better art style wise. So Astrobot had great direction in its art style, but there were a lot of reused assets throughout it. Um, and so again, just like Game of the Year, Black Myth Wukong, there were so many fresh, unique, new things in it, so many completely new elements and new assets that we haven't seen in games, character designs. It was it was like Dark Souls again, even though I would not call Black Myth Wukong a Souls like. And I may expound on that a little bit more later on, but I would give it to Black Myth Wukong for best art direction there. Best score in music. So for outstanding music inclusive of score, original score, song, and/or licensed soundtrack. So Stellar Blade, the composer for it, also did Nier Automata, and amazing music in that game. I did play that one. Silent Hill has great moody music. Metaphor Fantasio has some amazing battle music that's very unique. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, it's Final Fantasy. So the music's always high class, upper echelon, if you will. And Astrobot had some really, really catchy tunes in it. So this is a fairly hard one. So I'm going to go off of personal biases and opinion, which is Astrobot. I listened to the theme song multiple times. I love the "I am Astrobot," the one. Um, but that was the only song that I felt like I really wanted. Like there was an itch I had to scratch. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has one. It's an Aerith song, and that song I probably played about 30 or 40 times since this game came out. So just based off that, it's going to be Rebirth as far as music and score. Now, best audio design, I'm not even going to look too much at them. I'm going to give it to Astrobot, and the whole reason why it's best in game and audio design is because there were so many small, just attention to detail sounds and sound effects in Astrobot. They deserve this one. Best performance. So I have only I've heard Brianna White's, I've heard Luke Roberts, and Lena Jurgens. So it would probably be between Melina and Brianna White because I thought Brianna White did really great. I'm pretty sure she was Aerith, and Melina Jurgens also did good as Senua. She did pretty sure she was also Senua in the first Hellblade, and she was great in that one. So I'd probably give it to Melina. Seems like she had to put more of a full performance in versus just a vocal one. Um, Innovation and accessibility. So recognizing software. I had heard of some pretty good features added to Diablo 4, to be honest, that were accessibility. I may need to look it up really quick to find out what the accessibility ones were. But I remember there being a big article, and I was thinking, oh, hey, those are some cool additions to it. Games for impact for a thought-provoking game with a pro-social meaning or message. Senua's Saga. If I know that it's the same kind of themes that the first one dealt with, which is a lot of mental illness issues. So for me, that would be the one that would win this. Best ongoing. So awarded to a game for outstanding development of ongoing content that evolves the player experience over time. So this one's going to be an interesting one. So for the games that I was not deeply entrenched in, Destiny 2, Diablo 4, and Helldivers 2, those three games, I have to go off of the constant discussion I saw online and how the community was kind of feeling. Helldivers 2 had a very upset community throughout the year, and a lot of that seemed to stem. And I've heard that they've kind of tried to right the ship, Arrowhead has, because a lot of it seemed to stem from the fact that the developers had this vision for how they wanted the game, and it was running in complete conflict with the players that were playing it. The players wanted to have fun. They wanted to go in. They wanted to feel like they were just trouncing these bugs and robots. And Arrowhead wanted the players to have that feeling of you're just hanging on by the skin of your teeth, like you're barely there. And so they kept tuning and nerfing weapons and all this other stuff that just was removing the fun for a lot of players. But I heard they corrected a lot of that, but still, that's kind of a bit of a slight on them. Destiny 2, I have not heard a good thing about Destiny 2 from community and more public discussion this whole year. Diablo 4, I heard that the recent expansion and the updates that came with that kind of turned it around a bit as far as gameplay wise. But there are some people who are in the camp, such as myself, who did not like the story, did not like a lot of the elements to the story, didn't feel like it was justifiably Diablo. Um, and so I don't think it fit. It didn't fix that. And then I'm a huge Final Fantasy 14 player, but Dawn Trail was the first major misstep for them for an expansion. Storm's Blood. Some people in the community think that Stormblood was a really bad one, and I can see where that is. It had its misgivings, but there were a lot more in Dawn Trail than there were in Stormblood. So to me, Fortnite, which has gone through, completely revamped their Unreal Engine Fortnite to 2.0. They have on the horizon next year, I think, quarter one. They're adding basic physics into that, which means there will actually be normal physics, so destructibles that fall apart and collapse, as opposed to currently you destroy a wall and it just kind of phases out of existence. And so there will be a lot more actual physics instead of the stuttery physics if you've ever played Fortnite or played it recently. And the creative modes become a little bit more of a powerhouse. That plus the Lego Fortnite, which I think is a really great mode. So I would say, as far as evolving the player experience over time, Fortnite has done a massive leap this year in that regard. Best community support. So recognizing game for outstanding community support, transparency and responsiveness, inclusive social media activity, and game updates and patches. So Helldivers 2 had that huge stumble with the community support. Fortnite actually has pulled back a lot from how much they used to be transparent with the community. Final Fantasy 14 Dawn Trail, same thing. A lot of the complaints that Final Fantasy 14 players came to Square Enix with, like the issues with the jobs and classes starting to feel stale in Dawn Trail, the response they got was, "Oh, too bad. Wait until the next expansion." And it's unfortunate, but the community support isn't as it's not as responsive, but that's not new for Square Enix, specifically Creative Business 3, I believe, Yoshi P's team. It's not new for them. They've always been slow to respond to the community comments. Baldur's Gate 3, don't, I haven't played enough of it, and I don't know as far as update. I've heard a few positives about updates and patches, but the one that still boggles my mind, I believe it was announced originally at one of the Game Awards, is No Man's Sky. And No Man's Sky is just like, it's a gift that keeps on giving. The amount of updates they've done to it is insane. The fact they keep on going is just, it's stellar of the team. So, No Man's Sky for me. Best independent game. So, I've played UFO 50. Once again, have not played Neva or Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. I've played Blatro and I played Animal Well. I'll just be quick on this one. So, for outstanding creative and technical achievement, a game made outside the traditional publisher system, UFO 50 and Animal Well are both really well done. UFO 50 is a crazy achievement because it's 50 completely different retro style games, and they're full games. They're not just mini games. And so if they ever, I think this game will blow up. More people will be astounded by it if it ever leaves the cage that is PC. Um, so I know some PC players out there may be like, "Hey, what are you talking about? It's a cage." Majority of players are still going to be console, and so if they go to console with UFO 50, I think they'll have they'll blow up into the atmosphere as far as how much word of mouth will spread about UFO 50, because it felt like it came out, there was 2 days of a lot of discussion, and then it petered off because unfortunately, especially when you're in, if you release in a week or two that is busy on PC and you're a PC exclusive, you generally get drowned out. And so, Animal Well, at least on all the consoles, I believe that one is Big Mode, which is, I think, it's the YouTuber Donkey, his publishing company. Yeah, Big Mode. That released it. Is a really cool game. And so, for me, Animal Well, all the things that it accomplished, all the things it did without any real guides or text or anything like that was really cool. Best debut indie game. The best debut game created by a new independent studio. All right, so we have Animal Well, Balatro, Manor Lords, Pacific Drive, and the Plug Squire. Manor Lords is the only one I haven't played on here. And I'm going to say, as far as debut indie game, uh, I haven't played Manor Lords, but the scope that I have seen in gameplay videos, what I've seen people talk about, um, it's absolutely impressive from an indie. So I'm going to give it to Manor Lords just on that. I played these other ones, they're all great games. But it's always impressive to me when an indie game comes out and is double A or triple A in quality. Best mobile game. So I have played every one of these. Zenless Zone Zero. Um, Interesting game. Made by Hoyo MiHoYo, actually, which made Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail. And this one felt a little bit more disjointed. It's almost like they have a Venn diagram in MiHoYo where they're like, okay, we need to make sure that there's no overlap in gameplay or elements of gameplay with Genshin and Honkai and Zenless. And so you already had a lot of space taken up by Honkai and Genshin. And so Zenless came along and was like, oh, how about we have this kind of like arena fighter ish game that also is kind of a shop sim, but is also kind of a gotcha, and is so it has a lot of uh, pieces that don't necessarily fit together cohesively. But it's got amazing animation. That's its big thing. Is a lot of the animations for the characters and stuff. It's impressive. Wuthering Waves. I only played for a bit. I felt too much like a Genshin clone, and so that was definitely me writing it off, possibly too soon. But Pokemon Trading Card Game Pocket. Uh, it's probably going to be between Balatro and that, and this feels a lot like I say it. This one, I love playing it, but the game part is really just the collecting cards. There's a battle part of it, but the trading part isn't currently active. And the battle part of it is very, very light version. If you ever played the physical trading card game, it's a very, very light version of the actual trading card game. And so because of that, I think it's a stretch to call it a game. I mean, it kind of is, but I don't feel like it's as much of a game as Balatro is. Next category. So best VR and AR. This one is going to be very quick. I have played every single one of these games as well. Asgard's Wrath 2 was amazing. That came out in December of last year. That's probably why it's on here. But Batman Arkham Shadow, it was so amazing to be able to actually play an Arkham game in VR, and it was a full Arkham game. Best action game. So Black Myth Wukong, Call of Duty Black Ops 6, for the best game in the action genre, focused primarily on combat. So this is one of those I'm like, they should not have a category for action game. Maybe it was because it was slim pickings for first-person shooters, but they should have had a first-person shooter um, category, because Call of Duty Black Ops 6 is not an action game. Helldivers 2 is a third-person shooter. Same with Warhammer. There's only 2 action games on this action game list, which is Stellar Blade and Black Myth Wukong. And Stellar Blade was great, um, but it had some rough edges. Black Myth Wukong did have a little bit of rough edges, but the variety of combat and everything else it was the superior action game. Best action adventure game. So Astrobot, Prince of Persia Lost Crown, Silent Hill 2, Outlaws, and Echoes of Wisdom. So this is best action adventure. Again, why don't you have platformer? Probably because they didn't have a lot of platformer games. Because Astrobot would be a platformer, Prince of Persia and Lost Crown would be an action platformer, Silent Hill 2 would be a survival that's a survival horror game, and Star Wars Outlaws would be an open world third person game. Uh, Possibly adventure, stretching it maybe a bit. Echoes of Wisdom, uh, Zelda games were the original adventure games. So, well, not the original, but they were original action adventure games. So, um, I'm gonna give it to Zelda just because I'm going off of what the actual genre is. Best RPG for the best game designed with rich player character customization and progression, including massively multiplayer experiences. It's interesting. It says massively multiplayer experiences. None of these are massively multiplayer. Um, as far as best RPG here, again, I'll throw it to Elden Ring because Elden Ring is best fighting game. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, Grand Blue Fantasy Burst Rising, Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection Arcade Classics, Multiverses, and Tekken 8. So I do wonder, because they decided to throw a collection of older fighting games into this, and there was some talk about the fact that they changed rules to include remakes, remasters, and the DLCs. So this is another one that it's like, why are you here? Multiverses also had its official release, even though it had released for a good amount of time before in a beta state. And yes, I air quote the beta state. Um, Tekken 8, I've heard a lot of great things about. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, played that. Great game. And so I'd give it to Sparking Zero, even if you're not a fan of Dragon Ball. It is an impressive game. The amount of characters and everything else that they've done in it. Best family game. So Astrobot, Princess Peach Showtime, Mario Party Jamboree, Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, and the Plucky Squire. So for the best game appropriate for family play, irrespective of genre or platform. I don't even need to think about this. Astrobot, definitely all the way in that. Best sim or strategy game, Age of Mythology Retold, Frostpunk 2, Konetsugami, Path of the Goddess, Manor Lords, and Unicorn Overlord. I played the demo of Unicorn Overlord. Um, Frostpunk 1 was really, really good. This is another remake, Age of Mythology. So I would probably. And Konetsugami, Path of the Goddess is one I think is on Game Pass. I thought about playing that guy too because it looked really interesting. Um, but based off of what I had played demo wise, Unicorn Overlord for that one. Best sports or racing. This one I have not played a single one of these, so I will actually skip it. Best multiplayer. For outstanding online multiplayer gameplay and design, including co-op and massively multiplayer experiences, irrespective of game genre or platform. So, as far as online multiplayer gameplay, uh, Helldivers 2 is literally built around it. It's probably going to be between that and Call of Duty. I've not played any Call of Duty Online yet. I've only played a bit of the campaign, but the little bit I did get into Helldivers 2, it was really well done. Best adaptation: Arcane, Fallout, Knuckles, Like a Dragon Yakuza, and Tomb Raider: Legend of the Croft. I have not watched either of these two. Fallout was really fun. There were a few things that, if you're a diehard Fallout fan, you may have been mad about. Knuckles was fun as well. It was just an entertaining show. But Arcane took and kind of elevated that whole entire world, and they've got Arcane season 2 out right now too. Um, Most anticipated game. Recognize an announced game that has demonstrably illustrated potential to push the gaming medium forward. So we got Monster Hunter Wilds, Metroid Prime 4. I mean, I don't have to look any further. For me, it's going to be Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. Uh, Grand Theft Auto 6 is probably going to be what a lot of people choose, to be honest, because I know there's a lot of people excited about that. Content Creator of the Year. I know one person on here, and that's Queso, because he usually gets see a lot of memes of him. So I'm gonna get Queso there. He also seems like he's a fairly nice guy. Best esports game. For the game that has delivered the best overall esports experience to players, inclusive of tournaments, community support, and content updates, irrespective of genre or platform. So esports. Um, I have not played any of these this year. Best esports athlete. I don't know any of them. Best esports team. Same thing. I don't follow the esports nearly enough. So there's our. It looks like you have a player's choice nominees and stuff, which open in 3 rounds, December 2nd, 5th, and 9th, leading up to it. So I can just click to notify me, and then it will notify me. Okay, so that is kind of that's it. That's me just going over talking about those nominees, those games, how I felt about them this year. Uh, if you have any opinions, anything I said, if you saw some you're like, actually, I think Elatro is Game of the Year, or actually, let me make a case for why Elden Ring Shadow of the Erd Tree does deserve Game of the Year, regardless of the fact it's DLC. Um, please, throw them in the comments below. I'd love to read those and start a conversation with you guys. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.